view, intelligence, logic, and being able to communicate things precisely are rewarded in our society, right? They're rewarded not just through validation, but financially even, and so forth. So being able to describe things precisely, to package things up into principles and all that, like you get a lot of validation for that. And it's often your survival mechanism in life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was growing up, it was the one thing I had was I was smart and I could figure things out. I could maneuver, I could go to school, I could learn, I could, whatever. But I grew up in an emotional landscape that was just miserable. So that was, in one sense, my saving grace. So of course there was going to be identity around that. So we sometimes identify with that part of ourself. But I will say that in deeper stages of realization, everyone actually has to go through this barrier. It's really just it's a view holding tendency of the mind. It's really like if you could say, what is the most fundamental thing that the mind seems to do all the time? It's taking snapshots. It's like click, takes a snapshot. This is how it is. And from how things are, it can formulate a sense of the self, orienting to how things are, the world that appears in front of you. And then it seems to know what to do from there. Like has a strategy, it has an orientation, it has a goal, and so forth. But in a very simple way, the mind is just sort of taking pictures and trying to orient. And it's doing it all the time. Almost every time a thought forms, basically, it's doing that. And I might just call that the tendency for inherent view. And you can see through that at various levels, actually. But there is sometimes a shift someone can go through where it's just like, all of a sudden, there's just no identity there anymore. You don't identify as the view-forming apparatus anymore. And that just loosens things up tremendously. And then beyond that, it's always obvious to the person who has dissolved that tendency. It's always obvious when someone specifically is coming from a view or not. It's a binary thing. It's either happening or it's not. And with you, I feel like there's a more emphasis on that maybe than some people. But again, everyone will have to go through this. And it's a pretty deeply rooted perceptual filter. It's like trying to contain the Nile River in a little vial or something like that. That's how it feels. It has this strange feel of like standing on a whale fishing for minnows. All I can think of is like analogies or metaphors for this. But just give the mind a rest. Just pat it on the head. Thank you. You've done a lot for me. You continue to do a lot for me. But you have no business here, right? You can't serve two masters. It's another way of saying it. You can serve the master of the mind, of the inherent view-forming tendency of trying to summarize yourself in the world right now, or you can serve the master of indeterminacy. And that's the end. It's all over right now. Over. You're staring into the abyss all the time. And everything else will keep happening. The sensations will be there. The body will do what it does. All that stuff will process. But there's just no finger on the scale. There's no one taking credit for any of it anymore.